he comes out to conquer because the world's going to be in a mess, but he's going to try to bring, some order into the chaos. That's what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to look like the good guy, and everybody's going to say, oh man, he's the guy for the job. So we've been going through Revelation and talking about different events that have occurred, and we've now come to the point in our study where we've begun to study the events that are taking place within the tribulation itself. And we're talking about the seal judgments, and then the trumpets, and then the bowl judgments. And again, I showed you a slide before, and it was on your sheets, where you can see where we are going through the seal judgments now, and then when it gets to the seventh trumpet, or the seventh seal, then the trumpets actually start also. So there's overlap. When you get to the seventh trumpet, then the bowl judgments begin. And so I do want to say that the things that are occurring right now in Revelation, so to speak, in our study, they still will continue throughout the tribulation. All the seal judgments are doing is just kick-starting what's going to continue to happen. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Even though other things are going to be added to it. How many sometimes you feel like that you already got enough on your plate, but you're still working on this thing, but you got this thing now you got to take care of, right? And that's what's going to happen. And so the tribulation is not going to be a pretty sight. So we want to talk tonight about the third and the fourth horsemen of the apocalypse, but I quickly, in order to understand those again, I just want to give you a brief review of the first and second horsemen. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at our review. Number one, the first seal, we said, is the first horseman of the apocalypse. First horseman of the apocalypse. Somebody describe him real quick. He's in white. He has a crown. How many crowns? One crown. All right, what else? He's carrying a bow. What's he riding? A turkey? A white horse. Okay. Is he the good guy or the bad guy? The bad guy. And we know him as the Antichrist. Some people have said that they actually believe that it is Jesus himself who's releasing these judgments. But I don't see that, because if that were true and he's releasing that judgment, then he's the one that's opened a scroll in heaven for that to happen. Now, he's not going to rush down here, because then that would kind of like break his vow of the second coming, wouldn't it? So we know that he is the Antichrist. In Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, it says, "Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals. And I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, 'Come.' And I looked, and behold, a white horse. And its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him." Now, I remember I touched on this before. A crown was what? Given to him. In other words, he could not do anything that God didn't allow him to do. And God allows people sometimes like that, people who are unscrupulous, people who are evil, to do things, and I don't always know the reason why, but I do know that sometimes he does it in order to get our attention, to draw us back to him. One of the largest attendances we ever had in this church, I mean, we've had real large attendances. We've been over 500 before, and ran up in the 300 and 400s on a regular basis for a while. But we had the largest amount of people we ever had right the Sunday after 9/11. The Sunday after. And almost every church I talked to was the same thing. So sometimes things happen to get our attention. God allows things to happen. Because remember, there's nothing happens that he doesn't know about. And the Bible says he works all things together for good to those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Do you love him tonight? That's the key. All right? Now, behold, a white horse, its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. Now, we know that when he came out conquering and to conquer, what he was doing was, because think about this. If the rapture occurs at the beginning of the tribulation, then this world would be in chaos, wouldn't it? Absolute chaos. Because you think about people disappearing right on the spot. What if all of a sudden 2/3 of this church disappeared right in front of you? Clothes just dropped. You didn't even see him go, it was so fast, because he says it's going to be in a twinkling of an eye. Right? If we were, some of us were left behind, we'd be like, oh my goodness, I really screwed up. Big time. Now I got to go through this thing, and I know what Pastor Dave's taught on. And so he comes out to conquer because the world's going to be in a mess, but he's going to try to bring, some order into the chaos. That's what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to look like the good guy, and everybody's going to say, oh man, he's the guy for the job. And so he's going to rise up around 10 kings. We talked about that rise. And then he's going to overthrow 3 of them. But he's eventually going to set himself up in the temple in Jerusalem, which hasn't been built yet. But if it says there's a temple, there's going to be a temple. And he desecrates it, and that's when the Jews and everybody else figures out this guy is not who he says he is. Now, let's look at your chart. Matthew 25, I've got, two scripture references there, and then the identity or the commentary on them, that where this is talked about, we see in Matthew 24, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And that's what the Antichrist will do. He'll build up to that in that first 3 years of the tribulation. Revelation 6:2, a white horse, a rider with a bow and crown. The crown meaning he's going to rule. The bow meaning he's going to make war and bring people. He's going to conquer people, and those who are against him, he's going to subdue them. Religious deception is one of the major things that's going to happen. Those who will come falsely representing Christ, which will deceive many. All right, we know Christ was on a white horse too, but we know that he was at the end of the tribulation when he comes and brings his army with him. All right, so let's go on. The first horseman refers to the Antichrist. He is the false imitator of the true Christ, who is also associated with a white horse, and we went through that part last week, Revelation 19:11 through 14. And if you've missed any of these, we can always get you copies of these study sheets, and then you can go online and actually watch those on our Facebook page, and even now, some of them are on our YouTube channel. All right, let's go on. At the beginning of the tribulation, the Antichrist is going to be given authority, which that's what the crown means. It's going to be given to him. And he first comes on the scene as a man of peace. He didn't come in, trying to act like he's the big shot. He comes in as the man of peace. You ever seen anybody slip into your job or some other thing, and you could tell that person was trying to schmooze everybody? Right? Yeah, that's what Hitler did. So he comes in as a man of peace, But ultimately he wages war. That's the bow, conquering all who oppose him. And that's what the Antichrist will do. Revelation 13:7 says, and the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. He was given authority. God did not intervene in stopping him. You know why? Because millions are going to come to Christ, and he wants to see how serious we really are about our relationship with him. Are you willing to die for him? Let's go to the second seal. So the second seal, now who's opening the seals? Jesus is. Where's he at? In heaven before the throne of God, right? 4 living creatures are around him. The elders are around. John is witnessing this. He opens the second seal. Second seal represents what? He remembers. So the first seal represented what? Are the Antichrist. Okay. Second seal represents, say what? Represents famine. Famine. Okay, the first one and the second one are occurring. The first one actually represents where he comes in and begins to take control. He comes in as a man of peace. But because wars are going on, and wars are going to increase, and people are dying, and he's going to come in as a man of peace. He's on the white horse. But there's going to be death there. But he's going to come in and take control. And the second one is famines. Because of war, a lot of times in war-torn countries, what do they have to do with food? Have to ration it, don't they? So let's take a look real quick at this. All right, he's on the red horse. He has a sword, taking peace from the earth. Now this rider is taking peace from the earth. So the Antichrist has come in as a man of peace in order to get power, and now, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose everywhere. Nations start fighting each other. Red horse and rider with a sword, taking peace from the earth and causing people to even kill one another. Not just in war, but you think about the chaos that will be happening on the streets, even in our towns and cities. You know there will be gangs and somebody will lead those gangs, and they'll try to break into people's homes and take their stuff, steal their food. It's going to be a rugged time. So, famines. The black horse, the red horse, and rider with a sword, causing people to kill one another. Wars and rumors of war have continued around the world since Christ left the earth, but warfare between great nations and kingdoms, including world wars, which began in the 20th century, will increase in the end time. So wars are actually going to increase. I hate to tell you that, but it's going to happen. Now, let's go to some of the symbolism here. The symbolism is very clear. Red is the color of the horse. I never read the scripture, did I? Did I skip the black one? What did I do? I went to 3. I went it backwards, didn't I? Did I have them backwards on your sheet? No. Thank you. All right, so it's the second. I'm sorry, guys. My brain is scattered. So, I got down, and the beast was allowed, and I got to the second seal, second horseman, and I talked about, the famine and stuff. But let's go to Revelation 6, 3 through 4. I'm sorry, I got turned around there. When he opened, because I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? You're going to follow me regardless, huh? Thanks. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come," and out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So slay one another again. And as I did mention, that's what I was talking about, that people are going to kill each other, both through war, both through aggression in countries. And I'm sorry that I messed that up, because the first horse is the second horse is the nope. It's the red horse, representing war. Okay? So, let's go to that again. To the red horse. Can you get that back up there for me? Okay. So the red horse has a sword, taking peace, causing people to kill one another. You guys did get that, right? And you know that one of the after effects is going to be what our third rider is all about. So let's go on to the symbolism underneath of it. The symbolism is very clear. Red, the color of the horse, is a symbol of blood. And that's the next slide. And the sword is a symbol of war. Are you having trouble moving the slides? And they're different on there, huh? What the heck am I doing? I work hard on these things. But I'm like, can I blame it on medication? Or how about COVID? We can blame everything on COVID. Because I had it twice. So let's go to that. The symbolism is clear. It represents blood and war. What I do, you know what? I don't get embarrassed about stuff like this. You know why? Because we all mess up. There was a time I would have liked to be so embarrassed, and I mean, it's like whatever. But you know, I don't do this for you. I do it for the Lord. And He knows the same thing you guys. We all mess up, don't we? Sometimes. So it's a good lesson when you're a preacher. He gets his tongue tangled up. His tongue tangled up, okay? For those of you that went over your head. The horseman, let's go to the next part. The horseman is empowered to disturb peace, to create confusion and excite people of the world to make war with each other. That's what he's up to. All right? And the rider on the red horse is given a sword. And of course, we know that sword represents war. He's given not just a sword, but Bible says a great sword. In other words, he yields a lot of power. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed, a lot of war going on. He's going to wreak havoc with nations, with communities, with cities, between people. And moving on, the rider of the red horse is symbolic of the awful destruction and death of human life that's going to follow. I'm going to tell you guys, when the red horse comes, when Jesus releases or opens that second seal, it's going to be nasty. And it's the death of humans that's represented by the blood generated by the great sword. Again, it's not just a sword, it's a great sword. And that's a kind of a scary thing to think about if you're not ready to receive Christ or haven't received Him. All right? This is a fulfillment of 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Let's look at that. When people are saying everything is peaceful and secure, because that's what the first rider is going to do, right? He's going to come in, and then when everything is peaceful and secure, and he kind of puts things in order, then disaster will fall on them as suddenly as a pregnant woman's labor pains begin. And there will be no escape. You'll be caught up in it. The next thing you know, these wars, they're just, and I would imagine probably we're going to see some nuclear devastation going on. When you talk about, it says there'll be no escape. Can you imagine if you're in a large city and then you find out that within 15 minutes, now I've got to drive to Miami tomorrow, again, the heart of Miami, University of Miami. Been doing that quite a few times. And I want to tell you, the traffic down there is one heck of a mess. I try to take as many express lanes as I can. That's why you need that sun pass. But I see traffic that is just backed up at rush hour. So backed up, and even not in rush hour, and just moving. It seems like inches at a time or a few feet at a time. Cars by the thousands upon thousands, as far as the eye can see, either direction. Can you imagine finding out that within 15 minutes a nuke is going to hit you? You know, it'd be a terrifying thing for people, wouldn't it? It'd be a terrifying thing. That's really when you need to start praying then. If you didn't, I'll tell you what, that's when a lot of people are going to start believing. When people are saying everything's peaceful and secure, and there'll be no escape. And that brings us now to the third horseman. You ready for the third one? Amen. All right. The third seal gets opened by Christ. And the third horseman of the apocalypse appears, and let's read about it in Revelation 6, verses 5 through 6. And what I figured out is that my notes and stuff are in order. It's just I'm not in order. I'm the one skipping around. Revelation 6, 5 through 6 says, when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, come. And I looked, and behold, a black horse. And its rider had a pair of scales in his hands. You guys ever, when you go to Publix or somewhere and you get some fruit and they put it on a scale and weigh it to see how much they're going to charge you? But you've seen the old scales before that have where they tip, you know. And he had this pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, now the writer wasn't saying it, he was just fulfilling it, that what God had released. But in heaven is being said, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. Now there's a whole lot of different ideas about what that means. So I'm going to touch on a couple of them, but I want to read this in the New Living Translation. And so that's why I have it on there twice. It's not because I made a mistake, okay? Revelation 6, 5 through 6 in the New Living Translation. When the Lamb broke the third seal, I heard the third living being say, come. I looked up and saw a black horse, and its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hands. Now we understand that part of it. And I heard a voice from among the 4 living beings say, a loaf of wheat bread. How many guys like eat a loaf of bread? How often can you eat a loaf of bread? Pretty often. Whether it's wheat or whether you got Wonder Bread, whatever it might be. A loaf of wheat bread or 3 loaves of barley will cost a day's pay. And don't waste the olive oil and wine. Now, 1 loaf of bread, because think about this. During war, what happens? Food gets rationed. And in order to at least survive, people are going to pay a whole day's wages for 1 loaf of bread, so to speak. Do you think about that? Now, what if you have 4 or 5 kids? That's trouble now. Now, let's take a look at the chart. All right, on the chart, Jesus talks about in Matthew 24, and there will be famines. Because what is a natural result of countries that get bombed and all? It's famine, because their crops are destroyed. Their infrastructure of moving goods from one city to another is destroyed. All of that is destroyed. And now, if they don't have enough in their own cupboard to last for a while, it's going to be tough sledding. So you're going to have people out there, stealing, doing all sorts of things. Revelation 5:6-5, black horse and rider with scales to weigh scarce food supplies. In other words, they're going to be rationed. I remember when we've had a couple of hurricanes here that were pretty devastating. Gene was the worst one that we had for a long time. And I remember that we had different places that they brought in, and the National Guard did, where they rationed off to you so many, like bottles of water, and then we got these MREs. How many ate the MREs? Remember that? All right, so you had those. And so we were getting rationed food and water. So on the commentary part, devastating famines will increase around the world as the end draws near. Famines are caused by both drought and war. Now, there are places around the world right now where drought is a big thing. And people are starving all over the world now. But we're not talking about just one area of the world or 2 or 3 major areas. We're talking about the whole world is going to be touched by this. Now, let's go on. The third horseman rides a black horse and is popularly understood to be famine, as the horseman carries a pair of balances or weighing scales. Now, in the Greek, the weighing scales, or the word scales, is zygon, indicating the way the bread would have been weighed during a famine during that time period. In other words, if there was a famine back there and they were giving out bread, then they would weigh it. And you only got so much. That's all you got. Now, this is a picture of the scarcity of grain or food during the time when olive oil and olives, wine, or grapes are abundant. Now you have to ask, why is that? Why is olives and why are grapes abundant? Why is wine abundant and why is olive oil abundant? But the rest of the food supply is not. For some reason, God puts a restraining hand on those two items to not be destroyed. So maybe we ought to go camp out in the middle of a grape an orchard. So the thing is, let's go to the next part. At the same time, growers are commanded not to reduce the production of oil and wine, items which most would consider to be luxuries. Because remember who was it? It was right on the tip of my tongue. Went to the widow's house and she didn't have any oil, and he filled that thing, Elijah, okay? He went because she allowed him to stay there in an upper room, a bedroom of some sort, and as long as he stayed there, she had plenty enough oil in order to make bread, in order to make food. But she was so poor, she didn't have the money to go out and get it on her own. And even after he left, that supply never ran out. Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. I like my milk jug to be like that. Some of you guys would like your M&Ms or Skittles to be like that. So, they don't need any cultivation, hence their destruction seems to be forbidden. Now, this symbol of famine, again, is a result of the conquest and wars of the first 2 seals. white horse comes in, and then the red horse comes in, bringing war. And then the black horse comes in, right? But we're not there yet. Now, let's talk about this next one, because this one can be a little controversial. A quart of wheat was usually a slave's daily ration. A quart of wheat. This amount usually was purchased for about 2 cents in our money today. You can imagine inflation. But during this future famine, the grain or food is measured or rationed very carefully and sold at about 8 to 12 times its normal price. That's something, isn't it? We see gasoline that has gone up quite a bit. But what if gasoline went up 10 times what it is right now? In other words, instead of paying $4 a gallon for gas or $3.50, now you're paying $35 or $40 for a gallon of gas. Right? But that's what's happening. That's what's going on during this time period with food. And it's being carefully sold at that amount. So, with extreme inflation and scarcity of food, it will take a day's pay just for one person to barely eat to survive, let alone an entire family. 1 day's pay. Now, I can get into what all these mean, four pints, and all these in the English, and then, of course, the King James, New King James, another version, talk about, what they weigh and all that sort of thing, and what that's equal to. But that's basically it. What it comes down to, the thing to know is, it will take 1 day's pay for you to basically purchase a loaf of bread. And that's something. Now, I want to read to you a biblical example of hunger. Now, I've been hungry before where I felt like I was starving to death. Anybody like that? Some of you like that all the time. We call it that you got a bottomless pit there. Well, there are countries of the world where starvation and hunger, and you see pictures of during the Holocaust when they put them in concentration camps and what they looked like. Starvation. Listen to Lamentations 4, verses 4 through 8. Talking about the children of Israel. And the reason is because they rebelled against God. They went to other gods, and instead of turning to God himself, sometimes God has to get our attention. Lamentations 4 through 8. The parched tongues of their little ones. I want to think about that. Of their little ones, their babies and their toddlers. The parched tongues of their little ones stick to the roofs of their mouth in thirst. The children cry for bread, but no one has any to give them. The people who once ate the richest foods now beg in the streets for anything they can get. Those who once wore the finest clothes now search the garbage dumps for food. I want you to think about that. We're talking scarcity of food. This is what's going to happen during the tribulation also. Verse 6, the guilt of my people is greater than that of Sodom. Do you know in the Bible that when Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, God didn't say, I'm destroying them because they're perverted, they're homosexuals, or this or that. He says, I destroyed them because of the hardness of their hearts. He didn't mention the other. Because, you and I can live any kind of whatever lifestyle and still come back and know Jesus Christ. But sometimes you and I can get so hardened in our lives towards the things of God that He has to wake us up. They were destroyed. You look it up. They were destroyed for the hardness of their heart. How many have read it and know what I'm talking about and then know that's true? Now, the guilt of my people is greater than that of Sodom, where utter disaster struck how much? In a moment, and no hand offered help. Do you think that during the tribulation, people are going to, you're going to have the Red Cross come in and help you? No, it's going to be every man or every family for themselves. Our princes once glowed with health, brighter than snow. In other words, our leaders. Whiter than milk. Their faces were as ruddy as rubies. Their appearance like fine jewels. But now their faces are blacker than soot. And that's because that's what hunger does to you when you start to lose all your body fat and all the tissues everything just starts to go and your face changes. Your body changes. No one recognizes them in the streets. Their skin sticks to their bones. Their skin. It is as dry and hard as wood. Talking about their skin. Is that incredible or what? Did you just hear what that had to say? That's what's going to happen during the tribulation, guys. So let's move on. It seems that the common regular people will spend all their living on grain, food items, to try and fend off starvation during the tribulation and have nothing left over for other things. All the while, there are going to be a group of people. Don't you think there's not? There are going to be a group of people who will continue to live comfortably and make money on the inflated food prices because it's coming from somewhere, right? How many times have we had disasters happen around here and all of a sudden prices went up? Plywood, used to be able to get it for $12 and $14 a sheet. What is it now? 30. And didn't things go up when we had the hurricanes? We call that price gouging. Well, nobody's going to stop these rich cats from price gouging the common people. They're going to make money on the inflated food prices. When the writer is told, and do not harm the oil and the wine, this implies that though most people will face severe hardship, a smaller wealthy class will continue to enjoy their luxury for a while. And what this does is this accentuates a strong disparity between the wealthy and the poor. In other words, the gap's really going to go. Don't you know that right now you're hearing all this, that they want to depopulate the earth? How many have been hearing about all this stuff? They want depopulation. I mean, I'm serious. That's why some people believe that these pandemics have been let loose. And then I just was reading yesterday and the day before that somebody in the know in Washington or somewhere made the statement that we need to get ready because another one is being released that would be more devastating than the COVID one that just went through. Now, you can't tell me that stuff's not on purpose. There ain't no daggum bat in the marketplace that caused that. Because Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off of a bat once. But now in Ozzy's defense, okay, he thought it was a joke and that it was a rubber bat, and he picked it up and bit the head right off of it. Woo! He had to go through the rabies shots, yeah. Yeah, the whole thing of it has started with, you're right, with abortion and euthanasia. Yes. Look, I'm just going to tell you right now, an older person in a hospital don't get the care that a younger person does. And I'm still upset about 2 or 3 people who were pretty vibrant and looking forward to getting out. And the next thing you know, they're pumping them with morphine. And once you start getting that morphine, it starts shutting the body down. I know that goes on a wide scale basis. But we don't want them to suffer. Well, let me decide, you know. So we know that this is already happening. All right, so the third seal describes a scarcity in the midst of prosperity. Okay? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Isn't that always the truth? Now, I also do know that these items can also be used medicinally. Maybe that's how some people get through. I mean, there's different versions of why you don't harm those items. Matthew 24:7 says, nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. That's Jesus speaking. He's talking about the end times. Luke 21:11, there will be great earthquakes, and there will be famines and plagues in many lands. Famines and what? Plagues. And there will be terrifying things and great miraculous signs from the heavens. Then it brings us to the fourth one. Yes?
I'm sorry, I just got to ask this question.
Sure.
All right, if we're not pre-trib and we end up having to go fully in the middle,
We'll go in the middle,
are we going to recognize
I think absolutely we will. And if we go in the middle, I think we will recognize it. And because they'll start the mark of the beast thing. But it will be a great opportunity for the church to really share the gospel with people, because the last 3.5 years is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm hoping, and I believe about 99.5% that it's pre-trib personally, because he said he would not allow us to go through those things. The fourth seal, the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. What was he riding? A pale green horse. So we have the first one was what? A white horse. Second one was red. Third one is black. And now we got the pale green horse. Revelation 6:7-8. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, behold, a pale, and that means, if you go look at it in the Greek, it's pale green. A pale green horse. And its rider's name was what? Death. And of course, you think about all the previous 3 things that's already happened. All right? And its name was Death, and Hades followed him. Now, what's Hades? Hell. Now, what does it mean that death was on the pale green horse and Hades was following it? Anybody know that? That's because there's a lot of people going to die who don't know Christ. And when they die, where do they go? They go to hell. If a person dies now without Christ, where do they go? Hell. If a person dies during the tribulation without Christ, where do they go? Hell. That's why death is so massively going on, and people haven't accepted Christ yet. Many of them haven't, and so they're being sent to hell. All right? And they were given authority, now listen to this, over a fourth of the earth. A fourth of it. To kill with a sword and with famine. Now listen, these next two. And pestilence. Is COVID a pestilence? Oh, absolutely. And here's the one that really is the kicker for me. And by wild beast of the earth. Yeah. Let's go to the chart. So Jesus talks about pestilence in Matthew 24 in the Olivet Discourse. Revelation 6, the pale horse is literally the word chloros, which is, what it means is pale green color. Its rider is named Death and is being followed by Hades. Then you come over to the commentary. Pestilence is a disease on a large scale. This includes epidemics and pandemics. They will increase around the world. Wars and famines contribute to pestilence. Anywhere there's war and famine, pestilence follows, doesn't it? Because health conditions are terrible. How much of the world dies during that time? 1/4 during this time. Yeah, a third later on, the fourth is already gone. Now, let's move on. This seal follows the three which have already been broken and started. The outcome of the Antichrist bringing false peace, one world religion, one world government, worldwide warfare, extreme food shortages, will be death in the grave or death in hell for many people. This is the first three. And now on top of it, what do we got? A pale green color of this horse portrays a pathetic, sickly time. And, you ever heard somebody say, you're looking a little green around the gills? Yep. What do they mean? You don't look like you feel very well, right? How many ever felt that way before, a little green around the gills? Earlier today. A sickly time, and the results of this are grim. It's a widespread outlook that 25% of the world's population is going to die. Listen, guys, we're just talking in the first few months of the tribulation. 25% of the world's population, of those who are left behind. And if we don't go until the mid, 25% of everybody. I want to go through that. If this happened today, the world is almost at 8 billion people, okay? I think it's 7.8 or something like that. In only a few months, 2 billion people would die even before the halfway point of the tribulation. 2 billion. Can you imagine 2 billion people dying all over the earth? That is 1 out of every 4 people. You count the number of people in here. And when you count them, you say, okay, every 4th one is going to die like this. You start counting them. Yeah, Carol feels good because it's 1, 2, 3. Ron. 1, 2, 3. No, we're not going to do that. But you understand what I'm talking about. So, all this death will be the result of 4 major things up to this point. And this is what we're going to end with tonight on this. Number 1, violent bloodshed, warfare, or fighting for food. Number 2, famine, which results in even more bloodshed and starvation. This is how this 2 billion is going to go in the first few months. The third, pestilence, which refers to widespread disease like epidemics and pandemic outbreaks. And number 4, then one that we even talk about much, death. Now this one blows my mind, from wild animals. I tell you, we got a woods right here. I'd hate for 2 or 3 raccoons to come out and try to take me out. They come out there all the time. But listen, it says wild animals. Praise God, it didn't say domesticated. Because I wouldn't want to have to do something to my cat. I mean, he probably would be gone already because somebody would come when I wasn't looking, take him and roast him over a fire because of their hunger. Listen, believe me, that's going to happen. Death from wild animals. You know, we know that we have a panther that lives in these woods. All right, we've seen him. People in the Seminole Cove, they've seen him too. He's got an actual path. We actually talked about that, didn't we? Yeah, it comes right by your house, doesn't it? It's got a little trail there. Yeah, it's crazy. So different scenarios could be at work here. Let me give you a couple scenarios. A, perhaps wild animals like tigers and wolves, bears, lions, crocodiles, alligators, snakes. Yes. Yeah, you let them, they ain't going to love you. I'm just going to tell you right now. And I'm hoping you're not here for it. Okay? Yeah, all these pythons coming out of the Everglades. You know? Yes. There's some of them, yeah, if they can swallow a deer, they can swallow us. And not just them, the fact that getting bit by, coral snakes, rattlesnakes, moccasins. Anybody here ever, I was almost bit by a moccasin once. I stepped on him. And it just so happened where I stepped was right behind his head where he couldn't do anything. I want to tell you what, I was getting, down here at the pier, over here, that used to be a beach and people used to go and lay out there. I'm serious. It used to be, how many remember that? It used to be a beach. And it was 2 lane all the way down, and there was nothing from Walmart all the way to the lake. And you went over, and there's in the beach, and people would go down there, and I'd go down there, and I'd swim around in there. I'm serious. One time, the lily pads were up closer to, because then we tried to push them away. The lily pads were up, and I stepped on a moccasin right where I told you. And when I stepped on him and I realized what he was, I realized him in a split second. I literally walked on water. This foot right here, the one that hit him, my right foot, I hit him, but then I was like, man, I was walking on that water. You're lucky there's only one. But what we're talking about is them animals attacking, okay? Perhaps wild animals, bears, and lions, crocodiles, snakes will move into residential areas and attack higher numbers of people than usual. And then B, maybe animals like dogs, cats, mice, raccoons, squirrels. Because, there are wild dogs out there and there are feral cats and, mice, they get into your house, rats, spread rabies, other causes of death due to unsanitary conditions and lack of regular food supply. Because they're going to be, grocery shelves. They're in the grocery stores. Oh, they're not in ours. Yeah, anywhere there's food, you'll find rats. Do you know that in just about every food source that they allow a certain percentage of rat in there? Because like you have these big beer vats where they're brewing beer, and the rats, they like that, was it the hops or whatever? And they fall in to those big beer vats. If you drink beer, I'm just telling you, you're probably drinking some particle of rat in there. I'm serious. You think I'm lying? I'm not kidding you. Because, when I went many years ago, Busch Gardens actually had the Busch beer factory where they made the Busch beer, and they would give people, a complimentary cup of it. But they always told you, that, hey, we just have to know that. It's in every. So.
Mayonnaise, they allow one rat hair for every 100 jars.
Peanut butter and mayonnaise, they allow one rat hair per every 100 jars. Listen, have you read, I'm going to tell you now, have you read what our Okeechobee Utility Authority allows per millions of particles in our water? And one of the things that are allowed to a certain point is fecal matter. You know what fecal matter is? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just telling you. Some of you'll never drink beer again. Some of you'll never drink, wine too. Water. So, listen with this last one. Possibly, all of this can and will happen, and even more. The Bible says it's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. We don't know really for sure how this is going to play out. I don't know. I can't stand up here and, John saw it happening. So he didn't go into detail, but he gave us enough to know that we don't want to go through it. But whatever happens, the results will be horrible, horrific. Death will spread. And guys, because of death spreading, there will be dead bodies everywhere. You will not be able to get rid of those bodies fast enough. People will be killed right in the streets, I'm sure, and just drug off to the side or whatever, just left there. It's going to be something. So, when we talk about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, it is, and I want you to understand something. Seal number 1 kicks it off. I haven't even got to seal number 5, 6, and 7. Okay? But seal number 1, seal number 2, seal number 3, all these things that we just talked about, they're going to start stacking on top of each other. And then under them, then you're going to have the trumpet judgments. And you talked about 1/3 of the earth. Well, there'll be 1/4 of the earth will already be gone. So you take that 1/4, whatever's left of it, and you take another 1/3 out of it. It's like if you look at a pie and you take 1/4 of the pie. That'd be 1/4, right? Now, then one of the next things that's going to happen is that 1/3 of that 3/4 left, 1/3 of that is going to go. Some of you can understand because you get up in the middle of the night and get you some of that pie. Or cake. But you understand what it would look like. So in summary, take a look at this and we're going to go. First seal is a white horse. Had a bow and a crown, went out conquering. Second seal, red horse. Peace removed, violence breaks out, he has a sword. The black horse of the 3rd seal. Balance of scales, huge inflation, oil and wine is spared. 4th seal, Reverend 6:8. Death, Hades with him. 1/4 of the earth is killed with sword, famine, death, and beast.